welcome to another Professionals Under Pressure conference video update. Today, Laurie and I are really honoured to have with us Greg Hood, who is the recently retired ATSB Commissioner, who's actually going to be our keynote speaker on the day. So welcome, Greg.
Thanks very much. It's great to be here, and I'm honoured and delighted to be able to help at the seminar.
Thanks so much, Greg, and we're really happy to have you as the keynote speaker, not just because of your very eminent credentials and experience, but because we know, and even just based on the conversation we've had just pre-recording, is that you really get our desire that the conference be first and foremost about the heart and soul of aviation, which we really see as our own humanity. Laurie and I are just going to ask you a few questions, but before we do that, I'll just give everyone an update on Greg's bio for those that may not know him as well. So Greg Hood is the recently retired Chief Commissioner and CEO of the Australian Transport Safety Bureau, the ATSB. That's Australia's National Transport Safety Investigation Agency. Greg has more than 40 years experience in the transport industry, beginning his career with 10 years as an air traffic controller in the Royal Australian Air Force. Greg has since had a wide range of operational training and leadership roles across the civil aviation industry. Greg has had the unique experience of acting as Director of Aviation Safety at the Civil Aviation Safety Authority and acting as the Chief Executive of Air Services Australia and most recently Chief Commissioner and CEO at the ATSB. He's also a glider and powered aircraft pilot, and he's involved with a number of aviation bodies. He's a Fellow of the Royal Aeronautical Society, a Freeman in the Honourable Company of Air Pilots, a life member of the Qantas Founders Museum, and before joining the ATSB, Greg was a board member of Safe Skies Australia and a recent past president of the Canberra Philharmonic Society. Greg has also served as a member of the Business Advisory Council for World Vision and was 3 years a champion for the St Vincent de Paul CEO Sleep Out, raising funds for Australia's homeless. And again, Greg, we're absolutely stoked to have you. It sounds like you've been pretty busy in retirement as well, mate. Did you maybe want to just give us a quick update?
Sure, thanks, Adrian. Yeah, so since retiring on the 30th of June this year, I've accepted an appointment as Deputy Chairman of Air Services Australia, which also involves chairing the Board Safety Committee. I'm also on the steering committee for the CSIRO's Marine National Facility, which tasks the marine vessel, the RV Investigator, to conduct various scientific experiments. I'm also a judge for Canberra's Ovation Awards, which is Community Theatre Awards. And more recently, I've become a crisis support counsellor for Lifeline. So I've been doing 1 to 2 shifts a week for crisis support on the Lifeline phone. So yeah, life is just as busy as it was prior to the 1st of July.
Oh, thanks so much, Greg. And it sounds great, the work that you're doing. Lifeline sounds like it's much needed, particularly with a lot of the, I guess, what you could call latent anxiety that's out there with COVID and all the pressures that's really bringing to bear upon people. So that's really great. I'll hand over to Laurie. He's got our first question around the Professional Under Pressure conference and your role there. So, Laurie, do you want to hit us with the first question, mate?
Yeah, thanks, Barky, and good morning, Greg. I guess our paths crossed quite a few years ago now, and I guess it was inevitable because you're very much involved in the human side of aviation, which we all are. So I guess my only question for you this morning, Greg, is what prompted you to be involved in our humble little conference?
So I've always done as much as I could possibly do to ensure that the aviation safety message is driven home. I think, since my early Air Force days when I lost a number of good friends to aircraft accidents, I've been involved in enhancing aviation safety. I think more recently my role as Chief Commissioner of the ATSB, the reason we exist is to find out what happened in aviation accidents with a view to ensuring that it doesn't happen again. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the business that we're in. I suppose it's my view that nobody sets out to go flying to lose their lives, but when we fly, we're presented with an infinite number of variables. There's bad weather, mechanical malfunctions, air traffic control instructions, distractions, illness and fatigue, and many other variables. And these require us to constantly reevaluate the changing levels of risk that we face, and often requires us to make decisions. in the interest of maintaining our safety when airborne. And because we're human, sometimes we misunderstand or we misinterpret the level of risk that we're encountering, and sometimes our decision making is influenced by almost some kind of latent force that's so strong that it compels us to fly on. So that's always fascinated me, and that led me to I suppose my career decisions, and it's led me to continuing to to champion aviation safety in whatever for that I can.
As a professional pilot myself, that really resonates with me, what you're saying. Over the years, we've been faced with decisions in the heat of the moment that we have to make, and those decisions will dictate how we proceed further. Thanks very much for that.
Yeah, Greg, I've just got one last question for you. And obviously the hardest thing about an accident is the human cost in terms of the loss, the grief, and then the lives of those that are left behind that are changed forever. And this will in fact be much of what the conference is about. But I'd be really interested in hearing how you've processed all of that and how it's affected you personally, particularly in your role at the ATSB.
Sure. And during the 5 years at the ATSB, I went to a number of accident sites myself. I suppose one of the most recent ones that I went to was the loss of the C-130 large aerial tanker near Cooma. And the accident happened quite suddenly, and it was the aircraft was tasked to save a koala and kangaroo wildlife sanctuary up about 31 kilometres to the northeast of Cooma. The crew did a practice run and then did the retardant drop, did a left turn, and then impacted the terrain, rising terrain, not far from where the retardant was dropped. So a horrific scene, an awful accident, and killed 3 very fine American firefighters. So about 6 days after the accident, the Australian government flew the wives of the C-130 crew out from the United States to Sydney, and then the Army brought them out to the accident site on an MRH-90 helicopter. And basically, that's one role that I wouldn't delegate. I felt quite strongly that I should do the facilitation of the visit for the next of kin. So I was able to meet the next of kin, the 2 wives, the father of one of the crew, and the 12-year-old son of one of the crew. I met them at the helicopter. We went up to the tent where we had the operations room set up, and we had a briefing, and I showed the next of kin through the accident site. And I have to say that I just can't imagine how distressing that was for them to come to a land far, far away in such awful circumstances. And they were physically distressed, but also so very grateful that we'd taken the time to show them through the aircraft wreck. And I've kept in contact with those next of kin during the progress of the investigation. So I saw them again at the memorial service in Sydney, and of course the staff at the ATSB have continued to keep in contact with them to update them on the progress of the investigation as it's continued. So I've seen the real human impact of accidents such as this, and I really feel for those that have been severely impacted and will remain impacted for the rest of their lives by aviation tragedies.
Yeah, thanks so much, Greg. And I have to say, I think that was what first raised my interest when I first met you. You may not remember this, but we actually met at a Pacific Defence Human Factors Conference a number of years ago, where you were presenting, and you started off your presentation rather than what I'd seen in the past with, sort of the structure of the ATSB and what the ATSB does. Instead, you started off with, I'd just like to share about a friend of mine that I recently lost, which was your good friend, I think, Rob Lee, who you used to jam with. And then you played the video, I think, which was really meaningful. And I think there was a lot of man tears and other types of tears in the room when You were all there playing Amazing Grace, and I thought, wow, this is a different take on aviation safety. So, yeah, thanks very much for sharing that.
Yeah, that's right. And we do owe a great deal to Dr. Rob Lee for his work in human factors and his work in aviation accident investigations. And, largely his methodology has been adopted by, the majority of accident investigation agencies throughout the world. So, Vale for Dr. Rob Lee and sorely missed.
Yeah, and it's an amazing legacy, and I think it's quite unique, really, out of all the types of accidents that we've got such a in-depth and comprehensive system that looks at aviation accidents, and I think really brings meaningfulness to what would otherwise be meaningless. These are opportunities for us all who are left to kind of learn and honour that legacy by learning from the mistakes that we can easily make ourselves. So thanks again, Greg, and we're really looking forward to catching up on Saturday, 26th of February, 2022. And if anyone would like to register to come along to the conference, they can do so at the Professionals Under Pressure website, which is just simply all one word, professionalsunderpressure.com, and you can register via the Eventbrite link there. So I hope to see you there. Thanks, everyone.